Welcome to the Pickleball Recovery Podcast, where we highlight products and practices to help you feel better faster, so you can spend less time stiff, sore, and injured, and more time on the court doing what you love. This podcast is sponsored by AlloMD. Don't just mask pain, eliminate it. AlloMD provides intense relief and advances continual repair for both acute injuries and chronic pain. All-natural, patented technology developed by doctors to get you back in the game fast without the use of opioids, steroids, or NSAIDs. AlloMD, harnessing the power of pure natural ingredients that provide deep, penetrating repair. Patented, validated, natural. Learn more at www.allomd.com and make sure to use the discount code PBR at checkout to save $5 off your order. What's up? Welcome to Pickleball Recovery. I'm your host, Tim Ringgold. Great to be with you. How you doing? Did you play any pickleball today? I hope so. If you don't play pickleball and somehow you stumbled upon this podcast and this topic, welcome. You should jump in and join us. It's bliss. If you are a pickler, welcome back and great to have you. If you know my journey, I am someone who has been playing pickleball for about 2.5 years now, and I've been in pain for a lot of it, and started this podcast as kind of a project to help me and anyone listening recover faster, because our bodies aren't what they once were. And if you're over 40, you go out on a pickleball court, you feel like a kid mentally, but you know what it's like physically, So what I'm happy to say is things are getting better for me. I got to tell you, I just played my first tournament with 3 events over 4 days. And I played 7 hours of really intense mixed doubles on Sunday, got in a car, drove like 4 hours, got out of the car, got a massage, got back in the car, finished the drive. But in conjunction with the massage, I used my Firefly recovery device and I used AlloMD. And I can tell you guys, on Monday morning when I got up, I was fine. That's never been the case. So I played 7 hours of tournament pickleball on Sunday, and I woke up on Monday and I was not sore. So this stuff is working for me. I'm really excited. So happy to pass on all these different techniques with you. And I use a lot of different things. So today's interview is like exactly in line with that, because one of the things I do is I take cold showers and I do cold plunges. And I know from the research and from my own personal experience, the positive effect that has on your body, even if you don't feel like doing it and even if you don't think it's pleasant, well, forget all that. So what it does for your body is unbelievable. So you're going to want to listen in to find out about hydrotherapy, both hot and cold, and what good it holds for your body. And we're going to dispel some myths along the way. My guest, Michael Roviello, is a wealth of knowledge. You're going to hear a really inspiring story about his own journey to health and wellness and how to optimize your body for whatever it is you want to do later on in life. So with that, let me get out of the way. Sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, and I will see you on the other side. Michael Roviello, thanks for joining us on Pickleball Recovery.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So we are hanging out today at our friend Joe Polish's studio, and this is his kind of conference room, library, because your spaces are full of clients right now getting healed. And
That's right.
We're going to talk about, in this episode, we're going to talk about a couple of the modalities that help people's bodies recover more quickly from exercise, from exertion, from wear and tear.
From old age.
From the natural, way of things. And then we're going to do a follow-up episode on a couple of the other modalities, because you offer some really cool things at your spaces, and I want all our listeners to know about them in advance. But before we get to the modalities, let's just talk about you for a second and kind of introduce you to the community. Tell us a little bit how you came to health and optimization as becoming like your core offering to the community, and take us through a little journey.
Yeah, I grew up in Queens, New York, and I would say I was athletic. I was into working out. This was, the 80s and the 90s, and bodybuilding was really popular. So I always liked following guys like Arnold and all the famous bodybuilders. So I was kind of interested early on in anatomy and physiology, in a sense, learning how to kind of optimize your body, but more for muscle mass.
Yep.
And at the age of 20, I actually enrolled in the U.S. Navy helicopter search and rescue program.
Okay.
So I got accepted into the program, and that took me on a journey to Great Lakes, Illinois. That's where basic training is.
Okay.
And then Pensacola, Florida, where our search and rescue school, air crew school, and then aviation warfare school was. So there's a lot of physical activity in that element. I mean, basic training, of course, had its physical activity, but once I got to Pensacola, Florida, that was more serious.
Okay.
Because rescue swimmer school was basically them trying to weed out people that were not going to, make it mentally, physically, emotionally. So there's a big part of the physical aspect, but also the mental training, the emotional training, make sure that you can handle stress.
Yep.
And I didn't realize the psychology of the training in the Navy, but I was just kind of like adapting and just flowing with it and trying to keep up with my peers.
Yep.
And ultimately I graduated, and then they eventually stationed me in Southern California, where I got to live in beautiful, Coronado, California. And that's where Naval Air Station North Island is. And I was stationed there with a helicopter unit. We were called the 8-Ballers. And that's where we would deploy and do all of our search and rescue missions. So once again, physical job, a lot of swimming, a lot of physical activity, a lot of running, push-ups, sit-ups, all kinds of body weight workouts. We would also hit the gym and work out. So most of my early life was all centered around fitness, physical, kind of beating my body up.
Got it.
And competing, right? A lot of competing.
Okay.
And ultimately, I got injured. I had actually a neck injury in the military. And when I separated from the military in late 2004, the neck injury was still lagging, still bothering me. And then like a year later, it started to get really bad, where I started to lose function. So it went from like pain that was kind of throbbing and problematic that would flow in waves.
Okay.
So there would be peaks where it was like really bother me, and it would really take effect on my life mentally and physically. And then, medication, alcohol, a little numbing, all that kind of stuff, kind of put it in the back burner for a while, and then it would show its teeth again. So it kind of did this dance with me for years, until I finally got to a point where I was starting to lose like mobility and function, mainly hand strength, losing my balance, basically all signs of neurological issues. So
how old were you when that was going on?
26, 27, 28.
So like prime alpha male, like prime of your life, this system's shutting down on you.
Yes, and I was losing strength and starting to atrophy. So all the people that I was seeing, the specialists, they were really concerned about multiple sclerosis, mainly because it was happening in all of my limbs and not just like allocated to like one arm or something like that.
Gotcha.
So eventually I had to go in and get the MRI to see if I had MS.
Okay.
That was like a really scary moment, because my grandmother had MS. So I'm like,
okay.
Oh, this is in my family
history.
My mother's mother had it. And, so that was a big concern for me and my family, that I had MS. So I went to specialist, a neurologist at the time, got the MRI, and then the MRI came back with no lesions, because that's what they look for.
Okay.
They look for lesions in your brain. But what they did find was my spinal cord was being choked.
Huh.
And the spinal cord was being choked. So the messages from my brain to the rest of my body were basically, there was like an interference.
Gotcha.
And it was affecting motor skills, all kinds of different things. And obviously there was a lot of pain associated with it, but there was also loss of function and loss of feeling, and that was really concerning. So ultimately they had to do an emergency surgery, and I got the surgery done, and I started the recovery process. And I recovered relatively fast because I was young and I was healthy.
Yep.
But once I started getting back into my normal routine, like post-surgery, a few months later, I started to realize the pain started to shift and started to show up in different areas of my back. And a lot of the same symptoms were coming along, which was loss of motor function, loss of feeling, and of course the occasional like bouts of pain. So I started to go back to the doctors, and more prescriptions, they do these epidural shots to kind of try to deal with the localized inflammation. Okay. So I was getting the shots, and that didn't solve it either. So about a year after my surgery,
Sorry to interrupt your story. Were they like cortisone? Like what kind of, do you know?
Do you remember?
Yeah, it's some sort of steroid.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a steroid shot.
I had that in my back in my mid-20s for mysterious pain that they couldn't figure out why it was. They were like, well, we can give you 3 rounds of cortisone.
That's exactly.
I don't really know why it works, but we know it works. And sure.
Yeah, and it's a big procedure.
Yeah,
and
same thing happened to me.
It's kind of dangerous because it's a big needle that goes in, and
yeah,
it's scary. They have to actually strap you down to the table. Did they do that? Because you don't want to be moving
right
during that process. So I went through all of kind of what Western medical medicine had to offer.
Yep.
I did it, and then what happened was a year later they said, well, we tried this, and this. The next step is we're going to have to go back in and do another surgery. We're going to fuse above and below where we already fused, which was my neck. I already had like 3 or 4 inches of titanium, and now they wanted to fuse above and below that. So I'm just thinking long term, like that's going to be a lot of issues long term with my mobility, flexibility, strength. And they started to rule out things that I was not going to be able to do anymore, which was a pretty long list. And so I didn't want to accept that. And that was kind of a changing moment for me where I decided, okay, I got the professional advice. Thank you very much. Now I'm going to go start to explore on my own. There were some people in my life at the time that were kind of dropping little seeds. And so now I start to really explore and go down these different rabbit holes. And some of those rabbit holes were basically, psychosomatic. Well, it really was like kind of an inner journey.
Yep.
And I was reading a book at the time, The Mind-Body Prescription.
Yep. We were talking about
that. Healing Back Pain, which was Dr. John Sarno, and he talked about this TMS syndrome. And that was really fascinating for me because it was something that I had not explored yet, which was inner work. I couldn't make the connection. Why would emotions and mental pain or mental health have any effect on my physical? I didn't know how to make that connection or that was even a connection to make.
Sure.
So that opened up my eyes. So I started to explore different things, and that took me to the world of what is meditation and, what are the benefits and how to actually do it, because it's difficult to do, especially for someone with a busy mind like myself. And then breathing exercises, and then that took me to a little bit into the world of spirituality. So then I started to re-explore spirituality again because I had kind of put spirituality on the back burner for a while. I grew up Catholic, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to leave that over here. I wasn't going to church. I wasn't doing anything spiritual.
Yeah.
And that eventually took me to really what my passion was, it was funny to make the connection because I was very much interested in history, anthropology, ancient history. I was just naturally interested in that. Okay. So I was always watching documentaries. I was always learning that stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a fascination with native indigenous cultures, not just in the Americas, but also in Africa, European native tribes, Asian tribes, the Aborigines in Australia. And I was starting to see a lot of connections between these societies and cultures that didn't have any communication. They were talking about a lot of the same things. Sometimes they were using the same symbology, which is fascinating. And their approach towards health was very similar too, in the sense that they used a lot of plant medicines.
Yep.
And there was also a lot of psychedelics in their societies if you really start to explore.
Yep.
So I got really heavily involved in understanding the native indigenous practices of South America, Central America, and North America.
Wow.
So that took me on a journey to Peru and Brazil and the Amazon jungle.
Wow.
Where I started to explore a lot of those things and learn their perspective on health, learn their perspective on spirituality. And really I was on a kind of a journey of inner work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it started.
That's really cool. And starting with so if we talk about mind, body, spirit, and the mind body connection, kind of two sides of the same coin for sure, right? Anyone who's ever had a loved one who's hungry, tired, right? Let's see what else, sick, or in pain, knows that their mood takes a dump, right? We just know that, all you have to do is just think about someone you know and love. If you put them in any of those 4 situations, their mood just goes, right?
To the ground.
That's it. That mind-body connection, one will drag the other one with it. And so it's reasonable. And this was, Dr. Sarno's logic, right? With okay, well, if the body can drag the mind, well, the mind must be able to drag the body. It must be a two-way street. And so for those of you listening, if you've never heard of Dr. John Sarno, there's a great place to start. There's a 2020 episode about him from many years ago, and it's on YouTube. So you can just check it out on YouTube. It's like a free clip. And then he has some great books, and life-changing for me as an athlete is his work as well. On a regular basis, my left knee will either go in or go out of function based on what I'm dealing with anxiety.
Absolutely.
And I have had to stop training sessions because I could no longer run, I could no longer cut, I couldn't move, and I would have to go deal with what was going on here because it really wasn't what was going on here. And that took a while. I mean, that was like some real years of reprogramming that was possible. And then that was a big breakthrough for me as well as an athlete. So I love that you gave that shout, but I also love that the journey started with the outside, ended up on the inside. And then how did you kind of weave both of those together into the spaces you have today? Talk about that.
Well, I made the realization, just like you did with your knee, when I started to look back at my life, when I was experiencing the most pain, I was like, okay, how was I living at that moment? Was I living hard? Was I being hard on myself? Was I being hard with others? Was, my intensity in a sense? And I started to realize, oh, wow, the moments where I was experiencing the most pain, I was kind of living the hardest in the sense of lack of self-love, lack of self-care to myself and the people around me. So I made that connection, and then I started to really work with that. And that just was driving me to like live a better life in the sense of just being more peaceful, more kind, and really leading with kindness and all these things that I guess I just wasn't paying attention to. So ultimately, I was working for a university for a long time, and I was there for about 14 years, and I worked my way up to a senior director of operations for the Office of Military and Veteran Affairs, and the job was great. I learned a lot. I was around good people. But ultimately, I was bored, and I was studying a lot of health, wellness. I was obviously going on these trips to Peru and Brazil, so I kind of lived a double life. It was like work Mike, and then it was like, what is Mike really interested in?
Yes.
You know?
I call it your Clark Kent day job. Like there's that side of you, and then tell us about the real Mike.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was strange, and I didn't like the idea that I couldn't be fully authentic at work. It's just the environment just wasn't open to that.
I feel that.
Handful of people, but really not collectively. So that right there was telling me like it's almost time to move on, but I had that little bit of fear. And then a guy came into my life by the name of Wim Hof.
Yes.
And Wim Hof came on the scene. I watched this documentary. I was fascinated with it. I started to practice his method on my own, just learning the breathing.
Yep.
A friend of mine and myself, we started doing ice baths together, which was cool to experience that. And I noticed a shift right away, and I saw that there was something really powerful in here that I was missing that other practices didn't have. And I really liked his message and enthusiasm. So I heard that he was coming to LA, and he was doing a 2-day seminar. So I signed up right away, got in my car, drove by myself, got an Airbnb, attended the seminar, met great people, loved the community. I was like, these are my people. And then on my way home, I made the decision, I'm going to leave my job and I'm going to become a certified instructor. And that's what I'm going to do.
Wow.
It's finally time to do it.
Let's go.
And so that's what I did. I left the job, planned it out well where I had like 6 months, and,
Right.
Package and all
Right.
the right things to kind of set me up for success. And ultimately I finished his curriculum, which took about a year to become a certified instructor. And I trained with Wim and hiked Mount Hood with him, and met wonderful people from all over the world. And then I started teaching the Wim Hof method here locally and building a following. And people were coming to the workshops where we would learn the science, the theory, the practical application of the method. We would do the breathing exercise. We would learn about the power of the mind. We'd talk about things like TMS syndrome and all kinds of sharing, storytelling and sharing. And then, of course, the cold therapy at the end. And then after the workshop, people like all fired up. Like, what's next? Now what? And I'm like, I don't have anything for you next. Like, we had some...
Go off and be well.
Yeah, we had some smaller stuff where we would like meet occasionally and do some like, all right, 2-hour breath work sessions and some cold. And,
Right.
we kind of made it fun. But ultimately, that led me to come up with the idea that a wellness center is what was needed. And my business partner, Jesse, who was also a Wim Hof method instructor, and myself, so we both combined our efforts and money and energy and time, and we came up with Optimize, which was a place where people can come daily, they can practice, they can have fun, they can connect, and ultimately our mission is to empower others to take responsibility for their own health through natural methods. And that's just not, physical health like recovery, which is just one aspect, but also the mental, emotional, and spiritual side, which is very important.
Right.
So we combined all of these different therapies and the synergy of the therapies with, of course, like a different type of vibe than you would find in most wellness facilities. And then, of course, the instruction and education aspect of it, which I believe is really missing in our society.
Yeah, totally. That is so cool. I love that story. Kudos, congratulations for what a winding road that took you as a military stud, athlete guy, to this inner journey to now say it's not just enough for me to do it for me, but wanting to create that for others as well, and in return get to be yourself, right? That's like a nice cherry on top. You get to be you every time you go to work.
Yes.
So yeah, let's talk. So like within the Wim Hof method, when we talk about cold, and I want to talk about today specifically hydrotherapy. So we can talk about cold plunges, ice baths, cold showers, and then you also have warm therapy or warm baths.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's kind of take the listeners, let's be honest, it's a rare moment that you want to jump into a cold shower unless it's a hot day. We are in Phoenix, but when I took my cold shower this morning, I was not looking forward to it.
Never.
It wasn't about pleasure.
No right? Pleasure.
It was not about feeling good in the moment. Although after, there's an immediate feeling good after, but those first 10 seconds are anything.
Especially when it's chilly in the morning, too.
Yeah, that's it.
The last thing you want to do is take a cold shower.
Last thing you want to do, right? So let's talk about what are the benefits and how it pertains particularly to physical recovery.
Sure. So from a science perspective, we'll just talk about the recovery. So what is recovery? Let's just think about that. If you work out and you do some sort of physical fitness of some kind, maybe you're lifting weights, maybe you're doing some sort of activity, basically what you're doing is you're tearing, right?
Yep.
You're tearing, and then what happens is your body recovers, and it's recovering, and you're getting, bigger, stronger, faster as you continue to do these movements, right? And that movement in itself is stress. That is stress for the body. And your body is learning how to adapt and react to that stress. And that's how we become stronger. That's how you build muscle and adapt to the environment. If you don't do any physical activity, you're not going to be strong and hard. You're going to be soft.
Yep.
Right? So as you continue to do more physical activity, you're going to be stronger. So essentially that is happening. And when we're young, that happens very rapidly and very quick. And then as we age, because of mitochondrial health and different things like that, that process declines, and hormones and all kinds of different factors that are all part of it. So you can use natural tools to assist with recovery, but not just assist with recovery, but also assist with energy, and also assist with hormone balancing and all of really the variables that come together to make a strong, solid person, right? And not only physically, but also mentally. So there's just a lot to cold water, just specifically about cold water. So we'll get into some of the details. Like you mentioned this morning, I don't want to take a cold shower. It's freezing. I'm chilly. It's cold here in Phoenix right now. I'd rather take a warm shower. But you choose to do cold. That right there is a big shift that most people won't take. So that right there is working on your mind. You're choosing discomfort.
Yep.
And you're breathing through the discomfort, and you're surrendering through the discomfort, and that ultimately will pay you dividends of how your body reacts and adapts to stress. So there's a huge benefit there. Then your nervous system is getting basically a shot, because as you take that cold shower or do the ice bath and do something cold, I went in my cold pool this morning, my nervous system is going into fight or flight. And as my nervous system goes into fight or flight, what's happening is my body's producing adrenaline. And this type of adrenaline, norepinephrine, epinephrine, starts to flow through the body. And norepinephrine, epinephrine, what they have in common is that they actually suppress inflammation. They actually will suppress inflammation in the body. And as you start to get into the health and wellness world, you realize that inflammation is that thing that's causing all of the problems. And it's not just like I hit my knee and my knee hurts, ouch, and it's just like inflammation for a little while. No,
Right.
we have this, we're walking around with these
Systemic.
systemic chronic inflammation and infections.
Yep.
So cold water helps with reducing inflammation naturally, but it also helps with the white blood cells, increasing white blood cell count as you continue to expose yourself to cold. So there's that element of it. And then there's also a big circulatory benefit that most people don't consider. Usually when you talk about health, wellness, and fitness, it's all the outer shell, right? Oh, how do I look? Do I have abs? Do I have big muscles? Do I look good? But ultimately, circulation is one of the most important things ever. We have 80 to 100,000 miles estimated of circulatory system. Like, how do you even fathom that?
80 to 100,000 miles
of blood vessels, veins, and arteries
in each one of us. That's insane to wrap your brain around.
It's insane. And if you've ever been to one of those exhibits called Body Works, they travel around the world really, then you'll realize, oh, wow, there's that many capillaries and veins and blood vessels just in your hands alone. And then it makes sense that if you were to straighten everything out, it'd be really long.
Right.
So that's what we have going on inside. And that's our highway system, and that's carrying oxygen, that's carrying nutrients, that's carrying, immune cells. So we don't want issues with that system.
Right.
We want things to flow well. We want our blood to flow well. We don't want, all of those problems. And cold water constricts. So basically, our bodies, this suit that we've been given, this amazing suit, is literally like suit 10.0 or whatever it is, in the evolution of humankind.
Sure.
So this body is designed to adapt to all kinds of stressors, including these temperature environments. And if you don't put it to the use, like, you're not exercising the software that you have.
Yep.
And we have this amazing software. So by exposing ourselves to cold, we get this vasoconstriction that starts to occur. And that's taking that blood towards the middle, the core, and there's a process to, keep the core warm. And then obviously when you get out and you do some movement, now you're getting that blood back into the extremity. So you're moving a lot of blood and you're keeping that vascular system, circulatory system healthy. You're giving it a workout.
Yes, that's exactly it. You really are. There's like, imagine your circulatory system having its own musculature, like you're improving its tone. Essentially.
Yes.
By going through that process.
Oh, yes. Tiny little muscles.
That's
They constrict
and
opening
up, and that's how things move. And you're putting it through a workout. At least that was my understanding. When you put yourself in this situation, and I think it's also important for us to remember when you exercise and you do tear, you end up with waste, right? And not just what we were bringing to the body, but it's also what we're pulling out. And the faster that we can get rid of the waste, the quicker we can grow new tissue and heal that area. So it's like, this is a really important part of our body that most of us, we probably heard about it in school and we were like, yeah. But if you want to perform better and you want to feel better and you want to move better, right? It starts with the inside out.
Inside out.
So we have to
circulation.
Eventually pay attention to it.
Yeah, blood flow, circulation, because blood is carrying oxygen to the cells, and the cells are hungry and they need nutrients and they need oxygen.
Yeah.
So you want that system to work well, because essentially aging is the decline of mitochondrial function. So how can we keep our cells healthy and happy is really what we're trying to achieve.
So just with that, because mitochondrial function is something that, like, when I was in biology, there we go, I remember the cell diagram and I remember the word mitochondria, because it's kind of a cool mitochondria. It sounds like a heavy metal band. Like, next on stage, please welcome mitochondria.
Yeah, it's like an 80s hair band.
Yeah, I totally see them coming in and just wrecking. And then I remember in my own health journey, and as my, I keep hearing about mitochondrial function, and I hear it a lot. And I'm like, okay, need a little refresher course. So, in 30 seconds or less, let's just kind of give everyone a sense of who are they again and why are they so important?
Yeah, they're basically foreign bacteria. They're alien. And that's what's the most fascinating thing about mitochondria. Yeah, they're not like from this earth. And they exist in all of our cells. They look like popcorn, apparently, and they are the ones that use nutrients, light, and oxygen and convert them into ATP. So basically they give your cells energy. Now think of your cells like they all have a job. Liver cells have liver job, and skin cells have a skin job, and blood cells have a blood job. Every cell has a job. If they don't have fuel, adequate amounts of energy, well, they're doing their job half-ass.
Right.
And ultimately you want to produce adequate amounts of energy so that your cells can do their job.
Yep.
So that's the difference between young people, where they have healthy cells, healthy mitochondria, they're producing lots of ATP, and older people where their skin's starting to change, their energy levels are different,
Yep.
and they just don't repair as well as they did
That's
when they
quicker.
were 21,
They're-
16.
Their power plant isn't pumping out what it used to.
Exactly. They provide the power to the cell.
There
So
you
the
go.
mitochondria is like, if you focus a lot of your wellness and health on how do I improve my mitochondrial function, whether it be from a supplementation or some of the activities we're talking about,
Yep.
then you can ultimately slow down the aging process.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. So let's talk about a couple of ways people can access the benefits of cold therapy, right? So we talked about the cold plunge, talked about cold showers. Let's kind of talk about both of those, like practical, like how to,
Sure.
right?
If you don't have access to a cold plunge, you have access to a cold shower, and it's free, and you can use it every day. Ultimately, what you're going to do is you're going to start your shower, take a normal shower, warm shower, but finish on cold. And all you're going to do is you're going to turn the dial cold. It's going to hesitate a little bit, and then like 5 seconds later, you're going to get the blast of cold. And I like it to hit the back of my neck. And ultimately, what you'll notice is that your breathing will change. When your breathing starts to change, you're going to start to realize you're taking deeper, fuller breaths. So you're going to start breathing very differently. And that's because the nervous system is kind of gearing up. It's kind of ramping into the fight or flight sympathetic tone.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best way to do it is to close your eyes, breathe in through your nose, and then extend your exhale, like very long exhale, maybe like in 5, out 8. So you're just really trying to slow down your breathing, which therefore will slow down your heart rate. So the other part of cold water training is it's a way to essentially train your autonomic nervous system. And what you're learning how to do is basically feel stress, adapt to stress, and then breathe through stress. And there's a lot of benefits that come just with that practice on a daily basis. There's also a really interesting science regarding weight loss and its ability to convert the fat into energy, because your body, see, babies don't have the ability to shiver. They're born with tons of something called brown fat, which is basically just fat with lots of mitochondria. They don't have the shivering mechanism until they start to develop like muscles. So babies have lots of brown fat, but that brown fat kind of declines because we live in kind of a temperature controlled environment. So there's no need. But you might be a baby being born in Siberia right now. So that baby really needs that brown fat to stay warm. And brown fat, really what it does is it converts visceral fat or white fat, white adipose tissue, and it converts it into heat. So when you're exposing yourself to cold on a daily basis, like you're doing, whether it's cold showers, cold plunges, those types of things, your body has the ability to brown more fat, and therefore it'll use the white fat and start converting it into heat. So you'll see some weight loss requirements, some metabolic functioning, metabolic benefits to just exposing yourself to cold. Something that simple is literally basically getting all of these interesting softwares that we have installed to play out and do what they're supposed to do, because the body's strong. I mean, think about human beings. Walked across continents.
Amazingly resilient, amazingly strong.
Yeah, people literally walk from Europe to Asia and vice versa. Like, that's nuts. You know, now we have a hard time walking around the block.
That's right. That's like people park in handicap parking spots without handicap placards because they're too lazy.
Exactly.
But that's off topic.
Yeah. Or they DoorDash everything.
Exactly.
The DoorDash society.
We are so on our way to WALL-E. It is just, that movie was a cautionary tale. It's coming.
The DoorDash is coming. Just I need to order a sandwich straight to my house.
That's right. I'm not getting up. I'll go to the door. That's as far as I'll go.
Yeah.
Well, we've come a long way. Taking a cold shower from start to finish is how I've kind of progressed.
Cool.
The nice thing about that is you don't linger.
No, you don't.
You don't
save
waste
money on the water bill.
You do, and you don't lose time in the shower like, oh, well, now I'm late, because you are like,
in and out.
moving pretty quickly. And doesn't hurt that I don't have a lot of shampooing and conditioning to do.
Not necessary.
Not necessary.
And you feel good because you're leaving alert too.
Oh, yes.
I didn't talk about the mental health. So
Yes.
really quick, you get a big shot of dopamine. I say 250% increase in dopamine. Your mood adjusts because adrenaline obviously shifts your mood, right? It's a
Yep.
fight or flight hormone. So it's going to have you kind of narrow in and really be right here. It's kind of right here, right now. You're not going to wander off thinking about a million different things, that
Yeah.
kind of monkey mind.
Yep.
It's like right here, right now type of hormone.
Yep.
So, and there's also some benefit, some science to show that there's benefits like in testosterone production, hormones, and all those types of things. So it's a really primal type of practice that's been around for thousands of years. And if you really think about it, we are a first world country, so we have hot water heaters.
Yes.
That's not reality for everyone else in the world. So
Nope.
there's a lot of people taking cold showers, and that's just their normal shower.
Yep.
We have choice. But also, if you go into the history and the literature and the ancient history, you'll realize that people use cold water for spiritual practices, medicinal use, in pretty much every continent all
Wow.
over the world.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Totally. When it comes to a cold plunge, you see in some centers they have what looks like a tub, and sometimes the water just looks like water, but you know that it's cold. And then sometimes you could see there's ice in that water, and you're like, what? So like, what's like a good cold temperature to where we're really talking about a cold plunge?
Sure.
And then B, we're not talking about a 20-minute bath here, folks. We don't want to scare you, right? So let's just talk about like how little exposure is necessary for it to be really helpful.
Sure. Cold water, 50 degrees or below is kind of what I shoot for. I
Okay.
think that's what's going to create that cold shock. That's what you're looking for, is
Okay.
cold shock. Although if you go to some Korean spas will typically have the water around 64 degrees or so, which is more like chilly water. I like more of the shock, 50 degrees and below.
Yeah.
And honestly, once you get 50 degrees and below, 2 to 3 minutes is plenty.
Yeah.
If you get into the 30s, 2 minutes is plenty.
Okay.
But basically, you're getting 2 to 3-fold increase in norepinephrine, adrenaline, in just like 30 seconds in like 40-something degree water. So,
Wow.
You're getting an effect. But really what's good practice is going into that cold water, learning the practice of surrender, closing your eyes, slowing your brain waves down, slowing your breathing down,
Yes.
slowing your heart rate down.
Yep.
And what I teach people at our center is we're basically doing a very deep meditation inside cold water. So, the first experience might not be like that. You might just get a little glimpse of that.
Right.
But by the time I train you, your second, third, fourth, fifth time of doing this, whether it's one day or whether it's like, obviously over a course of multiple days, you will learn how to go into a deep meditative state in cold water.
Nice.
And that's, I think, a good mind, body, spirit practice.
Yeah. And then how many times a week or month? Like, is there a minimum, like going to the gym one day a week? Not probably the best, but it's better than nothing. But what about cold plunge?
There's a PhD scientist out of Stanford, Huberman, and then
Andrew Huberman?
Yeah, Andrew Huberman.
Love his podcast.
Yeah, he does a great job, and he's connected with Susanna Solberg, and she's out of the Netherlands, I believe, and so they're doing a lot of interpretation of the literature and some of the studies that are out there regarding what's the maximum or ideal kind of frequency.
Yeah.
And basically what they've kind of concluded from some of the research is that 11 minutes a week is a really good dose. So break that up into X amount of days.
There you go.
So 11 minutes, if you're doing 2 to 3 minutes, 5 days a week,
There you go.
you're kind of falling right into that window.
Brilliant. And then you had mentioned, or you didn't mention, I saw it on your website, that you also have a different type of hydrotherapy that's not cold. It's warm?
Hot tub.
Hot tub.
Because the Romans knew it, and the Romans are smart. And then, if you go to Iceland, right, you have tons of hot springs,
Yep.
and then you have cold water.
Yep.
And they knew it too. And if you go anywhere around the world, you see a combination of hot and cold.
Okay.
So it goes back to that vascular system workout.
Okay.
When you go into warm anything, whether it be a sauna or whether it be hot water, you're get a vasodilation, everything opens.
Mhm.
So there's an opening, and that's like there's a blood pressure benefits from that
Okay.
aspect. And everything is opening. And then when you go into cold, we talked about the constriction.
Yep.
So think about when you're going to hot to cold to hot, vice versa,
Yep.
If you're doing a few rounds of that, look, your whole 80,000 miles of circulatory system is getting an
Gets a workout.
amazing workout.
Yeah.
And flushing a lot of those toxins out too.
That's a big
And that's
piece,
a big part of recovery.
big part of the recovery. And so the contrast becomes
Contrast therapy.
that becomes the real benefit there, is putting your body into those contrasts. So even for the person who's just starting at home with their shower, they're starting with a hot shower and they're opening up and then they're finishing cold and then it's closing up. They're kind of getting a little bit of contrast
Yes.
even at home before.
Yeah, do hot, cold, and finish cold, and
Yep.
leave cold. And even if you're a little shivery, that's good because your body's basically, burning fat. It's mobilizing fat to warm back up.
Yeah.
So it's taking fat storage and converting it into the bloodstream, and then in the bloodstream, the mitochondria then converting it into ATP. So you're basically like giving that system, like you're working that system, which is good.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So
Awesome.
simple tools.
Yeah. So that is really cool. And I'm really excited we got to talk about this because I've been on a cold water Wim Hof journey now for quite a few years. And I mention it sometimes to people and they're just like, don't tell me about that.
Yeah. It's weird that it has that thing. Like you mentioned the word cold and like triggers people. Like, I don't do that. I don't do cold. And living in Arizona, I hear this a lot. People ask
That's why they're here.
People ask me, like, well, what do I do for a living? I'm like, okay, where do I start? It's kind of a long story, but how do I get into this? I'll usually ask the question, have you ever heard of Wim Hof? If they did, it makes it a lot easier. But
There you go.
when we start talking about cold therapy, cold water therapy, ice baths, anything like that, there's weird fear associated with it. Oh, I don't do cold. I would never do that. That's why I live in Arizona. I moved here for a reason.
Yes.
It's like they're like
There's like a mind block.
yeah, big
Totally.
mind block. It's
Well,
interesting.
So you think about it, when we grew up, I know, and I still hear moms say to their kids, put something on, you'll catch cold.
Yeah, that old myth.
Catch cold. Yeah, exactly. And it's a myth, right? And so it's like we've programmed ourselves to be anti-cold.
Yeah.
And I think that was some of the real, when I watched Wim Hof do a TEDx talk at one point where he was being filled up
Yes.
in ice as he's giving the talk. And you could hear the incredulity, like the crowd couldn't wrap the host couldn't wrap his brain around the concepts that Wim was explaining because they had just been so programmed that this is the way it is. Hot's good, cold's bad. And it's like, well, do you ever put ice on something that hurts? It helps you then. It's not all bad. So this has been great. How do people find you online and your centers?
Sure. The easiest way to find me online is Instagram. That's where I'm most active. And you can find me at Michael_Roviello.
Okay.
And just my first name, last name, underscore in the middle.
Awesome.
And our center is Optimize, OPTIMYZE. And our website is optimize.me.
Nice.
We spell a little funny because the regular Optimize was taken.
There
so
we
we
go.
went with that one.
There you go.
So check out our website. We also have a social handle. Optimize.me is our Instagram.
Awesome.
And that's the best place to find me and our center and everything that we're up to and our workshops and our facilities. And we're going to be doing webinars soon and teaching and kind of filling that void of like basically health education, which is, I believe, is missing in society today.
Totally.
So.
All right, Michael, thanks for joining us on Pickleball Recovery.
Awesome.
Woohoo.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Do you want to know the number one mistake picklers make that leads to increased pain, soreness, stiffness, and injury? Just head over to www.pickleballrecovery.com and download my free guide to playing with less pain and more enjoyment. Listen, pickleball makes us feel young at heart, but not necessarily young in body. So go download my free guide at www.pickleballrecovery.com. See you next time.